If you want to understand how Iran has managed to outmaneuver U.S. diplomatic pressure, it's essential to situate this in the larger context of shifting global power dynamics. Because what we're witnessing is a fundamental transformation in how international diplomacy operates, especially as the traditional tools of American coercion are losing their effectiveness. The United States has relied for decades on a playbook of sanctions, threats, and isolation to bend adversaries to its will. But Iran has developed a sophisticated counter-strategy that has systematically neutralized these pressure tactics, and this represents a significant challenge to U.S. global hegemony. Let's start by understanding the traditional American approach to Iran. For more than 40 years since the Islamic Revolution of 1979, the United States has pursued what it calls maximum pressure campaigns against Tehran. This strategy involves multiple layers of economic sanctions, diplomatic isolation, military threats, and support for internal opposition groups. The goal has always been regime change, or at minimum forcing Iran to capitulate to American demands regarding its nuclear program, its regional influence, and its support for resistance movements across West Asia. The U.S. government believed that by strangling Iran's economy, by cutting it off from the international financial system, by threatening military action, they could force Iran to surrender its sovereignty and accept American diktat. However, what the U.S. empire failed to understand is that Iran has been preparing for this pressure for decades. Iran's leadership recognized very early on that the United States would never accept an independent Iran that refuses to subordinate itself to American interests. This is why Iran developed what I call a strategy of strategic patience combined with tactical flexibility. And this strategy has multiple dimensions that work together to neutralize American pressure. The first dimension of Iran's counter-strategy is economic resilience, and what Tehran calls the resistance economy. When the U.S. imposed brutal sanctions on Iran, especially the maximum pressure campaign launched under Trump in 2018 after he violated the nuclear deal, Iran didn't collapse as Washington expected. Instead, Iran adapted. The Iranian government developed extensive domestic production capabilities. They built up their pharmaceutical industry, their agricultural sector, their manufacturing base. Yes, the sanctions caused significant economic pain. There's no denying that. But Iran survived, and more importantly, Iran proved that it could survive. This resilience sent a powerful message to other countries in the global south that American sanctions are not a death sentence. You can resist, you can adapt, you can survive. The second dimension of Iran's strategy is what I call multilateral diplomatic engagement. While the U.S. was trying to isolate Iran, Tehran was busy building relationships with countries across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Iran joined the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which includes China, Russia, India, Pakistan, and Central Asian states. Iran joined BRICS in 2024, becoming part of the most important emerging economic bloc challenging Western dominance. Iran has strengthened its strategic partnership with China, which became Iran's largest trading partner and has made massive investments in Iranian infrastructure and energy sectors. Iran has deepened its relationship with Russia, cooperating on everything from energy to military technology to regional security. This multilateral approach has created a diplomatic cushion that makes it much harder for the U.S. to effectively isolate Iran. And this brings me to the third dimension, which is Iran's regional influence strategy. The United States tried to portray Iran as isolated and weak in West Asia, but the reality is completely different. Iran has built what it calls the axis of resistance, which includes Hezbollah in Lebanon, various groups in Iraq, the Houthis in Yemen, Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Palestine, and the Syrian government. This network gives Iran significant strategic depth and leverage across the region. When the U.S. threatens Iran, Tehran can respond asymmetrically through its regional allies. This was demonstrated very clearly when the U.S. assassinated General Qasem Soleimani in January 2020. Iran responded not just with direct missile strikes on U.S. bases in Iraq, but also through a sustained campaign of pressure on American forces throughout the region coordinated with its allies. The U.S. military has been forced to withdraw from several bases in Iraq and Syria precisely because Iran's regional strategy has made the American military presence increasingly untenable. The fourth dimension of Iran's counter-strategy is what I call nuclear leverage. Now let me be very clear here. Iran has consistently stated that it does not seek nuclear weapons, and the country's supreme leader issued a religious decree against weapons of mass destruction. However, Iran has developed advanced nuclear technology and enrichment capabilities. This gives Tehran what strategists call breakout capability, meaning that if Iran chose to, it could potentially develop nuclear weapons relatively quickly. This capability serves as a deterrent against the most extreme forms of American aggression. The U.S. knows that if it launches a full-scale war against Iran, Tehran might respond by withdrawing from the Non-Proliferation Treaty and pursuing nuclear weapons. This creates a strategic dilemma for Washington that constrains American military options. The fifth dimension is Iran's mastery of what I call the diplomacy of resistance. Iran has consistently portrayed itself not as an aggressor, but as a country defending its sovereignty and independence against American imperialism. This narrative resonates powerfully across the global South, where many countries have their own histories of resisting Western colonialism and imperialism. When the US pulled out of the nuclear deal in 2018, it was the United States that was isolated diplomatically, not Iran. European countries, Russia, China, they all condemned the American decision. Even though European countries eventually capitulated to American pressure and reimposed some sanctions, the diplomatic damage to American credibility was severe. The US showed the world that it cannot be trusted to uphold international agreements. Meanwhile, Iran maintained the moral high ground by continuing to comply with the nuclear deal for more than a year after the US violated it, only gradually reducing its compliance in measured steps while keeping the door open to diplomacy. The sixth dimension of Iran's strategy is its development of advanced military capabilities, particularly in missile technology and drone warfare. The US has tried to prevent Iran from developing these capabilities through sanctions and sabotage, but Iran has succeeded anyway. Today, Iran possesses one of the most advanced missile arsenals in the world, with precision-guided missiles that can strike targets throughout the region, including all US military bases and Israeli territory. Iran has also become a global leader in drone technology, developing sophisticated unmanned aerial vehicles that have been used effectively in various conflicts. These military capabilities serve as a deterrent against American and Israeli aggression. The US knows that any attack on Iran would trigger a massive retaliation that could devastate American military infrastructure in the region and potentially close the Strait of Hormuz, through which roughly 20% of the world's oil supply passes. This creates what strategists call a cost imposition strategy. Iran has made the potential cost of attacking it so high that even the most aggressive American policymakers have to think twice. The seventh dimension is Iran's energy diplomacy. Despite American sanctions, Iran has continued to export oil and natural gas. How? By developing creative workarounds to American financial restrictions. Iran has sold oil to China, which simply ignores American sanctions. Iran has used ship-to-ship transfers, flag changes, and other methods to evade sanctions enforcement. Iran has accepted payment in currencies other than the dollar, helping to gradually erode dollar dominance in energy markets. Iran has also used its massive natural gas reserves as leverage, particularly with countries like Pakistan and Iraq that desperately need energy. The US has tried to prevent Iran from exporting energy, but Tehran has found ways around these restrictions, demonstrating once again that American sanctions are not as omnipotent as Washington likes to pretend. Now let's talk about how all of these dimensions work together in practice. When the Trump administration launched its maximum pressure campaign in 2018, the strategy was based on several assumptions. First, that economic pain would force Iran to capitulate. Second, that Iran could be isolated diplomatically. Third, that the threat of military force would deter Iranian resistance. Fourth, that internal opposition would rise up and potentially overthrow the government. Every single one of these assumptions proved wrong. Iran did not capitulate. Instead, Tehran reduced its commitments under the nuclear deal while still leaving room for negotiations. Iran was not isolated. Instead, it deepened partnerships with China, Russia, and other countries. The threat of military force did not deter Iran. Instead, Iran demonstrated its willingness and capability to strike back, as we saw with the attacks on Saudi oil facilities in 2019 and the missile strikes on US bases in 2020. And internal opposition did not overthrow the government. While there have been protests in Iran over economic issues, the government has maintained control. The Biden administration came into office promising to restore the nuclear deal, but even this effort has been outmaneuvered by Iranian strategy. Tehran has consistently demanded that the US provide guarantees that it won't violate the deal again, which Washington cannot credibly provide. Iran has insisted that sanctions must be lifted first before it returns to full compliance, while the US wants Iran to comply first. Iran has strengthened its negotiating position by advancing its nuclear program, increasing enrichment levels, and installing more advanced centrifuges. Every time the US has tried to pressure Iran at the negotiating table, Tehran has responded by demonstrating that it has more leverage than Washington wants to admit. What we're seeing here is a fundamental shift in how international diplomacy works in a multipolar world. The United States is accustomed to dictating terms to weaker countries, but Iran is not weak and the international environment has changed. China and Russia are willing to support Iran in ways that create space for Iranian resistance. The global South increasingly sees Iran as a symbol of resistance against American imperialism. And the US itself is overstretched, dealing with challenges from China, Russia, and multiple other fronts simultaneously. This is why Iran's strategy represents such a significant challenge to American hegemony. Iran has shown that a medium-sized power with strategic vision, patience, and sophisticated diplomacy can resist even the most powerful empire in history. Iran has demonstrated that American sanctions, while painful, are not fatal. Iran has proven that diplomatic isolation is impossible in a multipolar world where alternative partnerships exist. Iran has shown that military threats lose their credibility when the target can impose unacceptable costs in response. The implications of this extend far beyond Iran. Countries around the world are watching and learning. If Iran can resist American pressure, maybe they can too. This is why the US empire is so desperate to defeat Iran, to make an example of Tehran, to show the world that resistance is futile. But so far, Iran's strategy has succeeded in outmaneuvering American diplomatic pressure, and this success is contributing to the broader decline of US global hegemony. On that note, I'm going to conclude. The struggle between Iran and the United States is not just about nuclear programs or regional influence. It's about whether countries in the global south have the right to pursue independent foreign policies, or whether they must subordinate themselves to American diktat. Iran has chosen independence, and its sophisticated counter-strategy has so far succeeded in defending that choice against the full weight of American pressure.